This is the March 12th, 2019 Town Plan and Zoning Commission meeting. Tonight, Commissioners DiGiacomo and Elliott are sitting. If there's anyone here interested in the Harbor Road, 1101 Harbor Road, that's been moved to April 9th. That's the access to the harbor there. Our first item is the minutes. Do I have a motion?
I move to amend the draft minutes on the bottom of page 1 to change the words floor area to lot coverage.
Do I have a second?
A second. Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I shared an email with the Commission last week about an error that was my fault with respect to how we articulated the condition that was imposed on the amendment to the Sacred Heart University application to exempt parking structures from lot coverage and floor area. I referred to total lot area when I should have been referring to the total floor area. I'm sorry, it was the other way around. I just did it again. I referred to permitted floor area when I should have been referring to total lot area. So the condition that was imposed based on my recommendation was that the total maximum permitted exemption would be up to 5% of the total permitted floor area, and as Commissioner Francis just said, it should read up to a maximum exemption of 5% of the lot area. So that was my mistake, and so now that the minutes have not yet been approved, I think it's an opportunity to re-articulate what the proper wording would be, and then we can republish the notice of decision correctly. So I apologize for the error, and I appreciate the Commission's indulgence in correcting that.
Do you want lot area or lot coverage?
No, it should be, what it says now, up to a maximum exemption of 5% of the total permitted floor area. It should be up to a maximum exemption of 5% of the lot area. So it should be lot area versus floor area. So that was
lot coverage.
My misguidance, and so I appreciate the opportunity to correct that.
Is the applicant on board with this?
Yes, the applicant is aware of this. And
I vaguely remember. My recollection is that that is what we were talking about at the time.
Yeah, I don't think, and as I said in the email, I don't think there was any ambiguity, and I don't mean to speak for the Commission, but it was my impression that there wasn't any ambiguity that the Commission was exempting. This proposal is 140,000 square feet, and so that is actually more, so I think the Commission understood where we were going, I just didn't articulate it correctly.
Yes,
originally.
that's my recollection.
Any further discussion?
No.
Can we take a vote? All those in favor for accepting the minutes as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We got it.
Now you want the amended minutes?
Yeah, it's already been
No, I already
announced.
mentioned that. Sorry, it was the first thing.
So
It's Michael and Peter.
It's Michael and Peter. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So that motion carries. Okay, so our first item, old business, 5151 Park Avenue.
Okay, kind of related to the minutes here. This is a special exception application for a parking structure of approximately 140,000 square feet for Sacred Heart University. The Commission at the last meeting, as we just corrected, amended the regulations to allow structured parking to be excluded from the lot coverage and floor area calculations for university uses in the R3 zone. The height of the upper level of the parking level is 35 feet above average grade. There is an elevator tower that reaches to a height of 48 feet. However, this height is only 17 feet above the elevation of Park Avenue because, as you know, this sits down in the low area of campus well below the elevation of the street. The design of the structure was recently modified at the last hearing to provide for a random pattern of those proposed mesh screening elements. The relevant standards for consideration of a special exception are as follows. One is a location type, character, size, and use of the buildings in harmony with and conform to the appropriate and orderly development of the town and neighborhood and not hinder or discourage the use of adjacent property or impair its value. 2, is the nature of the location and use of buildings and structures such that there is adequate access for fire protection. 3, are the streets serving the proposed use adequate to carry prospective traffic with provision made for entering and leaving the property without creating undue hazard to traffic or congestion? And 4, is the proposed use in compliance with the plan of conservation and development? I don't have anything beyond that, other than, as we discussed at the last meeting, when the amendment was being done, the university is trying to accomplish more housing on site, and they do have a need for additional parking that they are hoping to address with this parking structure.
Can I have a motion?
Move to approve.
And a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Just quickly, I thought it was a good application, meets the requirements of our regulations. Nothing more beyond that.
I have nothing to add to that either.
Just listening to Mr. Wendt list the criteria that we have to consider, this application appears to meet all of those criteria, and I will vote in favor of it. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Anyone abstaining? So that passes. Our next item is 1073 North Benson Road.
Mr. Chairman, this is a special exception application of Fairfield University. They are proposing additions to 4 existing freshman dorms in their quad. A 5-story lounge addition is proposed for Regis and Jogues Halls, similar to one that was recently completed at Campion Hall in the same quad. For Gonzaga Hall, they're proposing 5 existing double rooms on the first floor to be converted to a lounge space that will have an extensive glass facade on the first floor. And lastly, for Loyola Hall, there's a stage porch proposed facing the quad. All enhancements for the freshman students there, primarily for social engagement, and similar to one that they just completed at Campion Hall. The standards for review are the same as the previous application. Is the location, type, character, and size and use of the buildings in harmony with and conform to the appropriate and orderly development of the town and neighborhood, and not hinder or discourage the use of adjacent property. Is the nature and location of the use in buildings or structures such that there's adequate access for fire protection? Are the streets serving the proposed use adequate to carry prospective traffic? And is the use in compliance with the plan of conservation? I have nothing else, Mr. Chairman.
Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Noonan, Meg, the second.
Another good application. I find it meets the criteria, special exception. Aside from that, well, the other thing is we approved a similar one earlier, as Mr. Wendt said. So aside from that, I have nothing further to add.
Should be a very attractive addition to the university and satisfy the student needs. I think it's a great idea.
Any other discussion? Similar to the last application, I think that it meets the criteria set out in our regulations, and I'll vote to approve for it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. Our next item is 723 South Pine Creek.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, this is an application for a coastal site plan review for a proposed 2-family dwelling on this property. You would receive from us our report. What has happened in the interim, we have received via email about 24 requests for a public hearing to be held on this matter rather than looking at it administratively. But in addition to that, there's an issue of wetlands jurisdiction that remains unsettled on this application. The applicant made an application to the Inland Wetlands Commission for a declaratory ruling. In their opinion, it's tidal wetlands rather than inland wetlands, asking the commission, that commission, to agree that they did not have jurisdiction. The commission denied that request by taking an action that the appropriate course of action would be not for them to make a declaratory ruling, but for the applicant to make a map amendment application to correct the maps. If it is in fact, because it shows as an inland wetland on the map, and if it's in fact tidal, then the appropriate course of action would be a map amendment application rather than them making a declaratory ruling. So they have not done that at this point, and in the absence of the map change, I've learned through the Conservation Commission staff that if the map is not changed, then they would assert inland wetland jurisdiction. So they would either have to make an inland wetland application or make an application to amend the wetlands maps. Neither of those things have occurred to date. We do have a provision in our regulations, section 2.16, that requires that any application that requires an action by the Inland Wetlands Agency shall not be accepted by the Plan and Zoning Commission until such action has been taken by the Wetlands Agency. So in my opinion, we've got an outstanding issue of jurisdiction that the commission really hasn't taken an action yet, either to amend the map or to review an inland wetland application. I did discuss that with the applicant yesterday and today, and it was my recommendation to the applicant that they withdraw the application. They do not want to withdraw the application, so it is my recommendation that the application be denied without prejudice because it does not comply with section 2.16. And then they would come back and make an application once the wetland jurisdiction issue is resolved.
Thank you.
So moved.
So we're going to have a motion to deny without prejudice.
Correct.
Second?
Second.
Mr. McAleese? Okay.
Can I ask some further questions?
Sure.
Who is the applicant?
The applicant is Montauk Builders, LLC.
Represented by counsel?
Not for this particular application.
Okay.
They were before the Wetlands Agency.
Okay. I mean, my initial thought is, if this was somebody that was if this was somebody represented by counsel, I'd almost want to hear from that counsel, but even the individual as to why they think they're entitled to our action before going to, as Mr. Went had laid out. But the recommendation is denying without prejudice based on...
Yes, and I didn't realize, we didn't realize till late in the game that issue hadn't been resolved. I had thought up until yesterday that jurisdictional issue had been resolved.
No, understood.
So it shouldn't, so ideally we would have had this discussion with the applicant before it even appeared on the agenda, but that's
No, I
not the way.
understand. Just hearing the issue now,
Yeah.
I mean, I understand your recommendation, and we always rely upon it heavily, and for good reason. You're normally spot on. It just would have been nice to have had a little forewarning, but I understand that you heard about it late in the game too. Okay.
Question.
Yes. Ms. Francis?
Who would have jurisdiction if it's tidal wetland? Conservation?
No, if the map is changed, if the conservation, if they make an application to modify the map to change the wetland from, and they agree that it should be tidal versus inland, then the Inland Wetlands Commission would have no jurisdiction.
Right.
And it would solely be a coastal site plan application before you as it is now. If that doesn't happen, then they would need to make, in the alternative, they'd need to make an inland wetland application and have that adjudicated first and then proceed to the same application that's before you now.
And deep reviews coastal.
They did. I mean,
Which is all the literature
in this
we
case,
have.
we, it's our opinion that it complies with the coastal management concerns, but I think jurisdictionally, we don't have the benefit of the input of the Wetlands Agency at this point.
And who approved this map that the applicant thinks is incorrect?
The Inland Wetlands Commission.
Not the state, not DEP?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
comfortable following staff recommendation on this respect. I read the regulation quickly, and his narrative satisfied me.
Any other comments? I agree with Mr. Noonan. I think that we'll follow the staff recommendation on this. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, so the motion is passed. And we're moving to the public hearing. Our first item is 338 through 386 Commerce Drive.
Good evening, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the commission, ladies and gentlemen. For the record, I'm John Fallon. I'm here tonight representing the applicant, the Balise Motor Sales Company. With me tonight, as was the case 2 weeks ago, is Mr. Jeb Balise, who is the president of Balise Motor Sales. You'll recall he told us he's a fourth generation family business, and a great deal of reputation precedes him, not only here in Connecticut and in Fairfield, where Balise is presently located, but throughout New England. Also, Bob Serrano, who's our general manager of our Fairfield facility, is also here tonight, and Mauro Finelli of Rose Tiso, who's here on behalf of Rose Tiso. Very briefly, and without taking up a lot of time, you'll recall that we presented this application last month. We basically talked about two things that I think, or the commission focused on two things. One was the application and the decision of the ZBA to unanimously grant the variance that we requested back in January, so that we could locate the service building to the rear of the property as shown on the plan. As I said then and would say now, for two reasons. One was functionality in terms of ingress and egress for our customers. The other, frankly, was aesthetics. We felt that the intent of the regulations were not going to be well served by having the service building front and center on the streetscape. And generally speaking, the building that is the subject of where the dealership will be is already located, although not 18 feet, only 25 feet from the street line, so we felt that was important and would meet the intent of the regs. The second thing that you asked us to do, or that we offered to do based upon your concerns, and I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to do that, was try to address, and I think we have, and I hope you'll agree we have, the circumstances with regard to the street front elevation. I made the point, because lawyers are supposed to do that defensively, that, well, you know, it's an existing building and we're doing the best we can, but a number of commissioners, including the vice chair, sitting in the chair today, said, well, you know, can you do more? Because this building, it may be where it is, but it also is part of a streetscape. And so what we've done, and I'm going to ask at this point in time Mauro to just walk you through it, is we took another look, we took another effort over the last week or two to work on the elevations, and we also enhanced the landscaping. What we have for you here is basically what Mauro is going to present from, and it's copies of both the revised elevations that we PDF to Mr. Wenton, I think he got to you yesterday, and then the revised rendering itself, which Mauro will review with you, noting the changes. So I think I have copies here for everyone, if you can just pass those down.
Do you have the original
And
rendering?
Mauro will review the elevation of interest, I guess I'll call it, and tell you the changes we've made, and then I'll have a few comments.
Okay, good evening. So basically what we did is, and you can see here I have the older elevation and the new one.
Right.
We actually continued the Hyundai panels across the front of the building. And you can see it here, we brought it up to this location. I don't know if you can see it right up to this point. Also, I think another concern was the color of the front, which I think initially was going to be left white. We're going to now paint that the same color, the Hyundai standard color. Also, we have enlarged this storefront. You can see it on the elevation. We've enlarged the main entrance storefront to the building, which is right here. And we've also increased these three windows to the building.
Could you show that more of those features on the street front rendering?
Sure.
So,
Let's see, on there, it's probably best on this one.
that's the
These three windows here, 1, 2, 3, which are just tiny slits right now.
And you said there's an enlarged entrance as well?
Yes, we enlarged this main entrance to the building to make it more typical with the other entrance that goes into the Hyundai space.
Now, that's where,
And not to be redundant, the wrapping of the banding is green too, right?
Yes.
Yes.
The Hyundai logo.
Right, all the way up to
And
here.
are any of the windows new?
All the windows, I think, will be new on the building.
that's
Or
where
they're
the
the same
tenants
color
are.
as the existing, as the new stuff that's
Down
going
to
in.
the right is where the tenants are? Yeah. that's-
Right, the
that's
tenant
right.
space starts here,
Yeah.
so, you know, we didn't want to go any further
Right.
than the Hyundai space.
So the windows though, are, I saw on the elevations, they're larger, is that right?
Yes, they're probably twice as large as what's there now. These three windows here. 1, 2, 3.
And what is the white box we're seeing between the first two windows?
This here,
Yeah.
that's just another entrance into the space. I think it's a music studio over there.
The
Well, I see the
tenant-
doors on the
tenants-
side. I can
Yeah,
see it
the
there.
door's on the side, it's a tenant entrance.
Has that changed as well?
No, that hasn't changed.
And is there any, will there be signage there?
I don't think
Tenant
so.
signage? No, none is proposed. And if
No.
they wanted it, we'd have to come back and give you a plan, but I don't think that's the intention.
There might be a door sign there.
Well, no, we do have an existing,
Why don't you come up?
Yeah, come up to the mic.
Right.
Right, there's an existing sign there. It's been there for a minute, but no new signage is proposed for the tenants.
But new signage could be there.
But
so-
they'd have to come back.
Exactly.
and we're not anticipating that, we're anticipating,
For the record, this is Mr. Balise.
sorry, so we're anticipating, and we talked to tenants, keeping the signage the way it is, maybe beautifying it and improving it, but staying within the exact confines we have currently. Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Morrow?
I believe another issue was landscaping,
Yes.
so we added landscaping across the front of the property, and some street trees also, which you can see on the site plan. I don't know if that was there before, because I wasn't at the last meeting, but, so it was all across the front there.
Did we cover this last time, the one tree per 10 spaces?
Yes.
What?
No, the question came up.
All right.
The Hyundai banner didn't extend because you wanted to keep, is it a trademark of sorts or anything like that, or is it just kind of separate?
Yeah, I mean, we don't want it to go into the tenant area, because it, you know, it just doesn't make sense.
But what we did do, Mr. Noonan, is we did extend the banding to bring
This
some
one.
symmetry.
Right.
to the
No, I
front
understand.
of the- But we kept the Hyundai sign, and we did put the Hyundai sign on the street side as well, but this was not, this wall was not here.
Are you opposed to bringing the banding all the way over, or is?
The building jogs.
I mean, typically, you know, you would, you know, try and keep the Hyundai space different from the tenant space.
That's fine, I'm just,
You know,
I'm just trying to get a sense of what your thought process was.
Yeah.
'Cause when I first look at it, it almost seems like an awning on the tenant side or some kind of band, you know, to keep it you know, kind of like, what's the word? Yeah, continuous.
Symmetric.
I don't know what you
Yeah.
want to say, but I was just curious about what your thought process was.
So one of the things that Pat played with was just that,
Okay.
and tried different applications, and because of the roof line change, it just didn't play well.
Okay.
It looked like an afterthought that just didn't really fit.
Okay.
I think the term Pat used to me was architecturally correct, stopping it with that roof line.
Well, that's fair, that's important to know.
So the two trees that we see on the right side, are they on the plan that you just showed us?
yeah, I believe so. It's the second one in.
Oh, yeah. No, it has to. I thought it was on the building.
I mean, actually, we show this one here on the plan. There's this one here. I think actually one's missing in the center here, it looks like.
Well, the two trees I'm talking about are not in front of the display cars.
These two?
Right, and the ones you're pointing to on the plan are in front of the display cars.
In front of the tent.
Those are further to... Right, this one would be sort of over here.
Well, there's two of them, right? There's the red one and the white one. They're both over here.
Yeah. I think the renderer just took a little liberty with the...
So which plan are we going with, though? With those, so Mr. Wendt, do we need a...
I think you'd want to go.
We'd want to go with,
I think
yeah, with
you'd
this
You'd
plan.
want to go with the rendering of the rendering. This is what I think you want to go with, because I think it shows more.
Right, but it doesn't show the two trees I'm talking about.
In front
He's
of the
saying he doesn't
tenant
want the
space.
trees.
To the right, if you look in the bottom right corner of the plan that you have right there, it stops at the display
You want
cars
to make sure these two.
are included.
Are included.
Yeah, but they're not on that plan, yeah.
Without being presumptuous, that can certainly be a condition of approval that we submit to staff or revised landscaping plan.
Yeah.
Sure.
Including all this, but picking up these two trees. We have no objection to that.
Yeah.
That's our intent.
I've got a question, it just dawned on me, I've been looking at this elevation for a couple of, sessions now, and I just glanced down and realized that that big obelisk out there is not part of the elevation, that's actually a freestanding sign. Are
Yes,
we
it
approving
is.
that now, Mr. Wendt? That's a separate application, or is that part of this? Because it's on the plan. This whole thing here is actually its own freestanding element. Initially, it reads like it's part of the elevation, but it's actually forward of the elevation.
Yeah, yes, it is.
If I may, Jim Wendt, for the record. It's our position, and certainly Mr. Fallon can correct me if the applicant's opinion disagrees, but the signage shown on these renderings are illustrative. They would need to make a supplemental application for an overall sign plan as a separate application to this. So in answer to your question, I would say no, you're not approving the signage as it's shown. This initial rendering has changed. The elevation drawings in your packet show it accurately. There was, subsequent to the code meeting, there were changes to the sign plan pursuant to our regulations that are reflected in your elevations, but even still, it's typically, if the signage package comes as a second application.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Now, when I look at sheet A202, for anybody who's maybe not following me, that vertical element is not part of the elevation.
No.
It's just the band wrapping across the front.
Yes.
Yeah, which we,
And we had, there were numerous comments with regard
Yeah.
to the code minutes, if you read them, about the sign. So it was always our intention to get a building approved, and then, as usually is the case, we make a compliance application.
no, that's fine.
submitted
We've,
to the staff.
we've been looking at this, and we just saw that
looks like it's further
obelisk,
back.
what he
Right,
said
it's
was
actually
part of the
forward
building.
down here.
And it wasn't until we looked at it a second time or tonight.
Yeah,
that we realized
it is a
it's
little
fine.
deceiving. Initially, it looks like it's part of the
No,
building.
I thought it was.
Yeah, but you can see that window peeking out
also-
behind it, and then that's what catches your eye.
And,
Yeah.
and if I may, Mr. Chairman, I just need to confirm with Mr. Fallon one more thing about
Sure.
signage. But
We've talked, and Mr. Wendt and I talked, Mr. Balise and I talked, one thing I can assure you, our next step would be to submit a compliance plan, a compliance application with a signage plan, and we are not going to be seeking any variances in advance of doing that. Whatever we present to you as a signage package will comply with all the provisions of the regulations.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Actually, that was a cool architecture, actually.
I like that better than this.
What?
I like it, the thing on the front of the building.
Looks like a chimney.
Yeah.
Fireplace.
Thank you. Mauro, anything else? Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Kenobi?
No,
thank
thank you.
That's really what we have here. We appreciate you giving us the chance to come back. We hope, after consideration, we respect and appreciate the dialogue we had last time. I appreciate, and in retrospect, in thinking of it, and I say this particularly to Mr. Corcoran, I appreciate the sensitivity that he brought to this by way of, okay, as I said, the building's where it is, but can't you do more relative to the street side, the street-facing side of this property? And that's what we've really endeavored to do, and at the end of the day, we hope you will agree that we've addressed that in the best way that we can, taking into consideration that the building is existing and that is in need of significant aesthetic improvement. As I said before, without being redundant, Balise is a fantastic citizen, corporate citizen here in Fairfield. Mr. Balise, I think the way he carries himself speaks for himself about the quality and integrity he brings to this whole process. We very much want to make this investment for our dealership in Fairfield. We think it will make a very strong and positive impact economically and aesthetically at this important area of our town, and we hope by your good prodding and appropriate remarks, we've made what we think is a good application better, and that you will see fit to approve it. And we appreciate your attention and consideration.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak? So, hearing no one, Mr. Phelan, do you want to say any more? Close it.
I said all I could. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Well, that's closed.
Get that on tape.
This item is closed. Our next item is 33 through 35 Beaumont Street.
Yeah, they are, yeah.
What's that?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Are you ready for me? I thought I heard.
Sorry, I should mention, I mentioned earlier in the meeting, but the second item, 1101 Harbor Road, has been, will be April 9th.
Correct.
We'll move to Beaumont Street.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, ladies and gentlemen. For the record, my name's John Fallon. I'm here tonight pleased to be representing Beachside Estates. They're the owner. It is the owner of the property located at 3335 Beaumont Street. With me tonight to assist me in presenting this application, we have our architect, Mr. Chris Hoho, I'll call on in a minute to just review the architectural details, and Mr. Bob Sabry, who is Beachside Estates. Bob is a lifelong resident of Fairfield, has been building homes in this community for many, many decades, and I think his reputation for quality and standing behind his work speaks for itself. A little history here, which is relevant. This site has a pretty interesting history, actually. And I'm hoping this is the last time I'm presenting to you on this site. You may recall, those of you who are on the commission, that we originally came in for a mixed-use development here. The commission found that that was too intensive, and it was denied. We then came back in July of 2017 for a 12-unit residential development that was brought to you pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 8-30G, the Affordable Housing Statute. That was approved by the commission, and we thank you for that and that consideration. After consideration, however, of development options and extensive continued discussions with neighbors that Bob was instrumental in engaging, the applicant, Mr. Sabry, determined that, and the neighbors, I think, who may speak themselves, and we have certainly petitions, agreed that a 6-unit market rate residential community, as shown on the plans we submit to you tonight, would be preferable to the 12-unit 8-30G. So what you basically have now is an application for a piece of property where approximately a year and a half ago you approved the 12-unit 8-30G, and now we're seeking a residential community of 6 units. The property is located in the Design Commercial District. In December of 2018, the Zoning Board of Appeals unanimously granted variances of section 12.4.18 so that to increase the percentage of residential use of the building from 50% to 100%, to allow residential use on the ground floor of the building, and to allow 3 stories to contain residential use. Although the property is zoned in the Design Commercial District, taking into consideration the character and nature of the primarily residential neighborhood on Beaumont Street, commercial use of the first floor, and I think the commission felt this way back in 2016 as well, just is not desirable. Any access, and that was one of the bases for denying the mixed-use proposal, any access for commercial use would have to be off this primarily residential street, and that's really not desirable for the residents. Bob, as I said, lives in this community. He knows and has come to know even better many of the residents in this neighborhood, and they were in unanimity with that. It should also be noted that all of the other provisions of the zoning regulations, including those pertaining to lot coverage and FAR, are going to be well within compliance. This development that is before you tonight will have coverage of 28.1%. The zone allows coverage up to 75%. And our FAR, floor area ratio, will be 95.5%, wherein the zone allows 150%. We were sensitive to the neighbors' concerns and considerations with regard to providing sufficient on-site parking. Your regulations for a development such as this require 15 spaces. We have met that regulation and have, in fact, provided 16 spaces. So, at this point, I would like to have Chris come forward of CAH Architects just to give you a brief overview of the design of the new proposal. We believe it's attractive, will harmonize with the character of the neighborhood, and it's going to enhance residential property values. As I said at the beginning, we are in agreement with our neighbors that what we are proposing tonight will be more compatible and less impacting to the neighborhood than the previously approved 12-unit development under 8-30G. I do have some documentation in terms of the neighbors' considerations that I want to provide. I'll just pass them down. Dr. Mo, I have a letter from Roger and Laura Keller, who are immediate abutters at 38 Beaumont Street. And then I have petitions signed by Bob Went, door to door to door to door to door. And the petition is brief. It simply reads, I would love to see Robert Savory build 6 condominiums on 3335 Beaumont Street rather than the 12-unit apartment building that he has current approval to construct. He has shared with me the plans for the 6-unit condominium site, and it's signed by, I guess, just about everybody on Beaumont Street and a neighbor, at least one neighbor in Granville. So we've done our due diligence. We hope you'll agree with the neighbors. We think the evolution of the proposal is a very good one, and we're very happy that the neighbors are pleased with it. Bob thinks it's a better proposal, and that's why we'll hope you'll approve it. I'm going to ask Chris to come forward at this point and just give you a brief overview of the architectural design.
Good evening, members of the board. I am Chris Hall from CH Architecture. I want to go through the plans a little bit here. We do have the 6 units divided into 2 buildings. The left building has 4 units and the right has 2, with parking on the ground level for both these. Each unit has 2 spots in the buildings. You access it from the central drive, and we have green space all around the property. If we take a look at the renderings, it gives you a glimpse into the materiality and the way we're trying to break down the massing, kind of trying to give each unit a little definition so you can see where one ends and the other begins, kind of give each little sense of ownership too in the property, and just trying to use a variety of materials, give it a little bit of visual interest and give it a residential feel from the street.
Can you remind me, with the 12-unit application, how high was that?
I'm going to have to...
Do you remember, Mr. Fallon? Same height, higher?
No, it was higher, but I wouldn't want to speculate. That's a work session question because staff has those plans.
That's fine, if you knew it off the
But
top of your head, that'd be helpful.
I don't know.
That's
I-
fine.
I don't know.
Probably higher, though.
It was higher, because this application complies with the height requirement.
Okay, that's-
And that application didn't.
Fair enough, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, this one's actually 7 feet below the maximum height too, so it's
Okay.
it's quite a bit below. You know, and generally, just if anybody has any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Chris is here for questions. The other thing I should mention, I think I provided this to Mr. Wendt, and if I didn't, I'll put it in the record to be sure now, but we did review this proposal with the fire marshal. I mean, the fire marshal, Chris, you...
I do have a question.
Mhm.
Turn my mic on. I'm just curious, I've got a couple of questions. I'm looking at the first floor plan at this point. But I don't know if it's really I guess it could be an architectural question. But I noticed the flood line going through that indicates part of the site being within the 100-year floodplain. So does that part of the building conform to the FEMA regulations and the other
It
parts
does.
don't? I mean, where
It-
the
yeah,
whole
right.
thing does?
The-
Just-
That whole building conforms.
That whole building does, so it has like flood louvers in the garage on the first floor and
Correct. Yeah, anything that's.
the first floor
that's
elevations
below
are
the-
above. So that first floor is just garage for that building?
Right,
Or maybe mechanical space or storage or something like
right,
that?
yeah, mudroom type things.
This one, just on this one.
It's on the front.
Yeah, that's a good point. It does say lower lounge, so what is that on the first floor of that building?
It's really just a vestibule.
Like an entry foyer
Yeah.
kind of thing? Okay.
Right.
And is that what we're looking at on the rear? I guess it's the southerly side. Are those the louvers that we're showing? Or are those windows, I guess?
No, those are just windows. The louvers aren't shown on this plan.
Okay, all right. And then,
Are the louvers higher or lower, or why are they not shown?
No, in fact, if I remember correctly, the first floor of this is actually above floodplain anyway, so it's, you know.
oh, the elevation is?
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I didn't check the elevations. That's a good point.
Yeah, so it'd only
I
be
was just
down
looking at the line.
foundation. Yeah.
That's true.
Right.
Because the first floor elevation's at 21 feet, so, okay.
So you mean the building is built up enough so that it's above the,
It's because the elevation changes so much. It's
Right.
still within the floodplain, but it's high enough where it
Right.
doesn't need to conform. Or not conform, but the regs don't apply, I guess.
so the floodplain height isn't the same as the FEMA height?
What does it say here? I'm trying to figure that out. 11 feet? Zone at elevation 11, and they're at, the garage floor is at 11, so the floor is just there, so
Right.
it's not below the floodplain, we don't have to worry about it, okay. I didn't see that the first time I looked at this.
So again, does it have louvers or doesn't it?
We actually hadn't even gotten that far yet. You know, we're just in planning rather than construction drawings.
So you'd have to anyway, if it needs
Yeah,
to
I
apply.
mean,
then-
we'll
I was
comply with
curious.
FEMA. I mean, we have to get a permit anyway.
Okay.
Right, right.
So it's possible that these elevations aren't exactly what's going to be there?
You mean the,
The building elevation, the architectural elevations, not the site.
no,
elevation.
this is what the building elevations look like.
Where would the louvers be?
If we needed them, they'd be on these edges here.
So there would be an additional feature that's not represented there?
Yeah, a little louver, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
That's unusual, however, just for the record, because oftentimes when you have the conceptual plans approved for zoning, then the plans are approved for a building permit, there might be elements, and those louvers are very discreet. They're not gonna be, they'd be hard, you'd be hard to notice them, but they'd be right there.
Right.
All the apartments are 3 bedrooms?
They are, yes.
How many baths?
How many are there? Right. 3.5 each.
About how big are the apartments?
Excuse me?
About how big are the apartments?
They were, where's my zoning?
Are they all the same, or do they range? No worries.
Just one second, I do have that.
I overlooked it, I just didn't see it.
Average per unit in the four unit building is 2680, and then 2842 for the other building.
So they're nice and big. Do you, can I ask a question?
They all stairways, or is there anything that has like elevator? or anything
Yeah,
like that?
the right-hand
They're
building.
elevators
Yeah, one elevator.
in
One building.
one
has
building.
elevators.
Yeah, just a smaller one.
Those are actually the bigger units.
Oh, I missed it.
Yeah.
Right, so two of the
Are-
units have elevators.
Do you see these as senior housing possibly?
Oh, yeah.
When Fairfielders wanting to downsize, they're very attractive.
Thank you. I think Bob's vision is that, yes, these will provide a marketplace for, and you hear me say this often, but I think it's true here, empty nesters. I kiddingly have said to him myself, time to downsize. But, so yes,
So
and
why
also
not?
I think you have, because of its location in the downtown area, good proximity to the railroad station, I think, younger people, younger families, younger couples, individuals who have grown up in Fairfield, moved away, and now want to come back. So I think it'll be desirable for both those demographics.
Yeah, there's a lot of demand for
Oh, yeah.
seniors wanting to stay in Fairfield, but they want lovely places.
Yep.
Are any of them accessible? Really handicapped?
Well, they have
With
elevators.
the wider
The
door,
two have
yeah,
elevators.
which is great, and the
Sure.
certain showers, I guess, and, more accessible.
We hadn't made them
as
particular, like ADA compliant or anything like that, but yeah, they could be modified to reach that.
Who are interested in that, they can be modified.
They could. They're also considering putting elevators in the other four, but haven't made that decision
Yeah.
yet.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
I did not get to drive down to the site this go-around. I remember seeing it last time, but I can't, I can't remember specifically. I'm looking at the Google Maps of the site. Is it the brick building and then a lot to the left of it? Oh, that's gone? Okay. So that other house is sort of like a greenhouse or something with a porch is the next lot over?
Correct.
Okay. Because it looks to me like you've got a zero setback on that side, so you're going to be kissing that building next door. Because that building looks like it's right on the property line.
They signed the petition. They're pleased.
Are they aware of that, though? Like they could literally reach out and shake their neighbor's hand through the window?
Yes, we did that to comply with the regulations, as Mr. Wendt can explain. In that zone, you have to maintain a zero side yard on one side. We actually modified the plans to do that. But to answer your question, not only did we do that to comply with the regulations, but the neighbor is aware of that. There is a particular, what section is it, Jim? It's 12?
21.9, I think.
The one with the zero setback that we go back and forth on.
Attorney Fallon, it meets all the setbacks, all the regulations.
Meets all the requirements.
All the objective of
Correct.
regulations, yeah.
Correct. And when we got those petitions signed, that Bob went around, not only with the architecture plans, but with the site plan.
Thank you.
You need to put you on the spot. It's 12, it's the zero, but not. 12.7.6.2.
I might have looked at the wrong one. 12.7.6.2. 0 on one side and not less than 10 on the other.
Correct. We've discussed
And
this.
and so, I mean, I think I don't know. I feel like I think I would prefer to see the 0 on the side where the parking lot is for the commercial building adjacent than a house within.
Bob Sabry, Jim told us that we had to do that, so what we uniquely did is just put part of the building to conform to the regulation, and that's not the entire building, it's just gonna be a little breezeway. We didn't wanna do it, but we had to conform. So as you could see, that little bump out, that's the only spot.
That's a good point, Mr. Mackley said. I administrator pointed out, that to comply, we work with staff, but that whole building is not zero setback.
Yeah, it's what, like 3 feet otherwise?
Yes.
I mean, I guess if it meets the regs, it's still, that makes me a little nervous having, I'd love to see what the.
Not only meets the regs, it's
Well, it meets the, well, let's, if I'm clear about this, it meets the regs for a design commercial district, right? And you're asking us to think about this as a residential building in a design commercial district. So if we applied the residential regs, I think the setback is more like, for the near, I did it based on the B zone, which is the adjacent zone at this point, and it was, I lost my notes.
maybe
5 feet?
So we're only 2 feet off.
Well, well, okay, you're right, well, no, I don't know if that's correct, you're 0 on 1, depending on how far the adjacent house is from their property line.
The 0 is only that breezeway element to get compliance.
Well,
not a breezeway,
it's for 24 feet.
It's a mechanical.
But his point's taken, though. Why, if you have a house on the side that you're having a 0 setback, and,
Why not make that the 10 foot, put the 0 on
there's
the
a
parking
parking lot
lot?
on the other side where you actually have a setback, why not switch and have a mirror image? So your 0 setback is by a parking lot.
We're trying to keep the 4-unit outside of the flood zone and just the 2-unit
Well, that's
in
a
the
fair,
flood
okay,
zone.
no, that's a
Okay.
fair point.
Is fire okay with that?
Yes, let me
Commissioner
address.
Went? Okay.
That's a fair point.
Well, no,
I have an
the flood
email.
zone, if they move it this way, it helps the flood zone.
I think they're talking about if we flip the buildings and put this on that side, this one on this side.
Just move it.
No, but that's a fair point.
Yeah. Sorry,
We
Mr. Fallon.
reviewed the 12-unit 8-30G carefully with the fire chief and the fire marshal, and your records would indicate they approved that. But I'm going to give Mr. Wendt, I think I already provided this, but.
As I recall, though, that building was pretty dead center on the site, and there was a decent clearance on the setbacks.
I have an email from from Chief McCarthy dated January 2nd of this year.
Okay.
And it refers to, John, I've reviewed the site plan and have no objection to the proposal as presented. So I'll give that to Mr. Wendt.
That'd be great, thank you.
So, I mean, I understand, but I would say to you that, again, we took very careful attention in terms of how we could lay this out, reduce it to from 12 to 6. The petition speaks to the fact that we took this up and down the whole street. I think the property owner on the side, Mr. McAleese, that you're referring to, is satisfied with the plans. I think if you pull out the plans, which, if you keep such things, or if you go to the zoning and look at what was there before, the 12-unit plan, it may have been centered, but it was totally devoid of any compliance with setbacks. So I hope you'll view this as an attempt by a local builder with strong roots not only in Fairfield, but in this neighborhood, trying to do what the neighbors perceive to be the right thing.
All good stuff, I agree.
Yeah, okay,
What
so
was the address of the neighbor that's gonna have the 0 setback?
I'd have to look at which one of the neighbors?
One was 0, one was
41
10.
maybe?
One side will be 0, one to be 10.
And it's the O'Connells.
It's either 0 or
They're on their.
Jim, what was that reg again, 12 point? Oh, sorry, I didn't write it down.
Oh, there, I would never report.
That sounds right. Yes. 0 on one side and not less than 10 on the other.
Okay.
The other thing
It has
Mr.
to be
Savory
0.
points out, Mr. McAleese,
Yes.
in further hope of making you comfortable with the application is, if you do go down there, you'll note that her house, the O'Connell house, has a significant side yard from our property line. So it's not like we're gonna be reading the newspaper she's reading from our windows.
Doesn't look like it. I mean, it looks like the driveway is all that separates the two
Well, you
structures
go
right
down
now.
and see it, but I think it's,
Okay.
it's not, her house is not right up on that property line. But again, it's where it is.
Are you sure? It looks pretty right up on my phone.
Yeah, it looks like you get some baseball in there, that's probably.
Okay,
4 or 5 feet.
Yeah.
really? Okay.
Plus, 4 or 5 feet plus, we're gonna be set back in a good portion of that building to 3 feet. But again, we're doing it at the specific need to comply with.
Sure, and if the fire department doesn't have any concerns, then
They do not.
that's the biggest.
It's kind of close now.
I know, that's what I thought too.
And again, if you compare it to the approved plans that are out there, it's a big improvement.
Microphone.
if you compare it to the, I don't know why I'm doing that, I apologize. If you compare it to the approved plans that are out there for the 12-unit scheme, I think you'll see there's a lot more elbow room here. That's really what we have, subject to any application. Any other questions, and defer to members of the public if there's any that want to speak. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak?
Jan Reber, 85 Beaumont Street. Can I just address that last point, because you really did have a good point about the side. I am in favor of this project, but I can tell you that putting the building on this side has an advantage. The house next to it is a large 3-family tall house. If you were to move this building over, next to it is an empty parking lot, and then there's a 2-story, not brick, whatever it is, cement block building. It would really make this look like a much bigger, imposing structure on the street than it is by being next to a 3-story, 3-family house. So it really, just strictly from an appearance point of view, I think it looks better on the side that they're going to put it on.
Thank you.
As I said, I support this application. I'd like to just mention 3 aspects that I think are relevant. The first is traffic. Beaumont is a dead-end street that feeds onto the Post Road. Traffic backup is often acute from 7 to 8 a.m. when people traveling to Stamford or further south try to make a left-hand turn. It can take 2 to 3 minutes per car to make that turn. So a queue of 3 cars creates an excruciating wait. My wife is one of those people. I hear about it many nights. The same problem is escalating from 12 to 1:30 as the lunchtime volume on the Post Road continues to build. The proposed development of only 6 units is not going to make the traffic situation on Beaumont notably worse. I feel like I'm the representative of Frederick P. Clark and Associates when I say that, because that's the kind of wishful thinking we hear from them, as opposed to their normal myopic analysis. But I think traffic from this development is going to be almost blissfully minimal. Second point is parking. The area of Beaumont Street near the Post Road is inflicted with a very heavy parking burden on weekdays. There's overflow from the office building on the western corner. That building was grandfathered, and there's not enough parking for all the offices that are in there. And employees from the other side of the Post Road, the north side of the Post Road, where there's no parking for some of the businesses, park on Beaumont as well. The proposed development with the resident garages and some visitor parking is really going to not make our parking situation worse. In addition, the applicant agreed with the neighborhood to go to the police commission to better rationalize no parking on the lower part of Beaumont Street. It'd be very helpful for us. Thirdly is pedestrians. Beaumont has a number of kids who walk to the school bus on the Post Road or who continue to walk on to school. The street has no sidewalks, except that there's just a few feet at West Fair Electronics. It doesn't fill their whole property. It only goes part way up Beaumont. The kids who have to walk to the bus stop on the street, that's particularly problematic in the morning during rush hour. And in addition, there's a small park at the far end of Beaumont Street, and there's often parents with strollers, with toddlers, with dogs going up and down Beaumont. They also have to walk in the street. This application, the applicant went to West Fair and got permission to continue the sidewalk, the West Fair sidewalk, beyond what he's got to do for his property all the way down West Fair. So there'll be a fairly significant amount of sidewalk on that side of the street for the kids and others to walk on. These are real benefits to Beaumont Street. The design's compatible with the neighborhood. Multifamily housing near the Post Road transitioning to single family meets the objectives of our POCD. The developer's local. He's not going to slap something up and move on. As you know, and as Attorney Fallon started off by speaking, this property has been through multiple applications that were either denied or never built. Finally, we've reached a point, what's probably the ideal use of a small lot. It's a good example of how arduous the process of late-night zoning hearings can accomplish in real positive progress. It's kind of odd to be up here before 10:45 at night, but it's nice. I hope you will approve this application. It's a real enhancement to Beaumont Street and to the town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Armando Imbrogno. I live at 84 Beaumont, a few houses on across the road from Mr. Sabry's project. And I usually like to speak after Jan because my opening line is, I agree with everything he says. I do support the application. I've supported Mr. Sabry in his last application that was approved. I know his work, and as Mr. Phelan said, his work does speak for itself. So now here's someone speaking for his work. I like the idea that it's a 6-unit apartment rather than 12 because, as mentioned a couple times, it will cut down on the traffic. I do have 2 kids that are currently driving and one that will be getting their license soon, so the idea of less traffic pulling out of that road and up and down the road is more comforting to me. I always tell them when they're pulling out of Beaumont, don't even try to turn left, go right, go buy a hot dog or an ice cream at Dairy Queen or Raleigh's, and then turn around and go the other way. And I also, we've protested a couple of things that happened at the top of the road in the past, and the location of that property has a ton of different options, and I believe the option that Bob has here is more favorable to me and to other members on the road. As you can see from the application, everyone was signed. I was one of the first ones to sign. And as far as sidewalks, I like the idea that kids are walking down the road, but my wife and I and our kids also like to walk down the road, so it's not only kids taking school buses, it's adults walking up and down the road as well. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Good evening. I'm Brian Parent, and I have property that's on 58 Beaumont Street, so it's just diagonal to this. So I think, first of all, Bob, thank you, because I think, yeah, it has been collaborative. I haven't been around much, so I might not have gotten my signature on there. So the house that I have is a cape. I have a picture, not that I have enough copies to circulate. You can see a bit of a contrast with that and this being across from it. But one of the things, it sounds like the height on it, was that clarified, or was that still a question? Because I had seen a number of different plans that had different.
I think we're like much less than the apartment building.
It's just under 30, the height is under, not to interrupt you,
Yeah, no,
but just answer the question.
Yeah.
The zone allows a height of 40 feet where it's 33 feet.
Okay.
This, I mean, that's 4 stories.
Pardon?
The 4 stories?
3211 and a half, it looks like, so.
Okay.
Because you take,
The mean,
That's a 33, but yeah.
you take the mean height.
yeah.
Height as measured.
Jim, maybe if you just offered an explanation of how the height works, so the public understands it's not necessarily what you're looking at there, the top of the building,
Yeah, it's like something with the roof line. That is part of my question, is just trying to understand
but
that.
it does conform to the regs, and it meets our height.
Jim Went again for the record. You're correct, Mr. McAleese, that the height is measured to the midpoint of the gable roof, not to the peak. So the 32 feet, just 33 feet in round numbers, is to the center line of that gable. And looking at this, it appears that it's about 14 feet from the bottom of that eave to the peak. So there's another approximately 7 feet to the peak, but as we define height, it's 33 feet.
Right.
Effectively 40 feet to the peak, but 33 as we measure it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. Okay, well, then just closing comment. Thank you again, and yeah, I also support this plan.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else? Mr. Phelan?
Very briefly, I think Jan's comment, which I had failed to mention about the sidewalk, is indicative of the approach Bob's taken to this. I'm not trying to brag on my client, but I think he is entitled, because he's taken a unique approach to this. He's worked collaboratively for over a year with the neighbors, They mentioned the issue with the sidewalk. He went to the other side of the street. We're going to take the sideway all the way up. And I just think that's very indicative of the way he's approached this and his commitment to work with the neighbors. At the end of the day, the 12-unit project that you approved was a good project under 8-30G, but there's a consensus on the part of this applicant and the neighborhood that this 6-unit plan is preferable to the neighborhood than what is presently approved for construction. You had a question, Mr.
I did about affordable housing. This doesn't, because it's under.
Correct. This is not this is a market rate project.
Okay, and the reason there's no, is because it's under how many, what was the regs for? 10, okay.
10, right, and it has to comply, therefore it has to comply with all your regulations, and it
Understood,
does.
yeah.
And that's really what we have. We think we've designed a very nice residential development. I think Commissioner Francis makes a good point. I think these are going to be very desirable, especially to people in my demographics and others. And at the end of the day, I probably close with Mr. Reber's comments, because it's the neighbors' impressions of this and their support for this that I think lends itself very strongly to your favorable consideration.
I have
Thank
one last question.
Yes, Mark.
Could you describe again what's happening with sidewalks? What's happening here and with relation to other sidewalks?
Yeah, we have, on our plan, we have to provide sidewalks on the frontage of our building. But as Mr. Reber pointed out, there was a neighbor concerned that the sidewalks, if you have the site plan, as you go up Beaumont Street towards the Post Road, are not there or are inadequate, especially for the school-age children. So Bob agreed and has cleared it with West Fair, right? To, when we're doing our sidewalks, we'll extend it to the full frontage up through West Fair, thereby providing safe access, sidewalk access for the residents, including children.
Okay, so with that, I'll close the hearing and close the meeting.
Thank you very much. Perfect.